Now let us try to validate our email address. Now for all of the forms of data, we had different options for data validation, be it as a whole number, decimal, list, date and time, and text length as well. But now we need a customized validation here. So when I click on custom, it asks for a formula. If it meets the criteria as mentioned in the formula, then it works. So first, let us cook up a formula over here. Let's prepare the base. I know for sure that any email address mentioned over here will end with @bright.edu. Now, the university that we are referring to over here, it's a fictitious university, nothing to do with any real life university here. It's a case, it's an example that we are working on over here. Because Bright and university are quite common terms, so please don't mistake it with any other university name. It's a fictitious one that we have here. And so let's assume that alice@bright.edu. Any email address that you mention in this email address slot over here in this column, it must end with @bright.edu and not a Gmail email address and not any other email address that maybe Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, or any other company email addresses, corporate email addresses. Absolutely no. It must be the one affiliated to Bright University. So how do we do that? First, I would start with analyzing this email address. I know one thing for sure, that the last 11 characters, that's @bright.edu, is consistent throughout across. What is not consistent is the one before the @ sign. So we have a validation here, but in order to do that, first let's see if the email address what they have entered is actually correct. Let's say there's another email address as alicewaters@gmail.com. Let's assume now that's a fictitious one that I've come up with. Let's say that's alicewaters196. If this is the email address that we are looking at, I would like to validate whether is this a proper email address given by the university, or is it a bright.edu email address. So we say write from this text, I want to see what the last 11 characters are. So you see it's bright.edu. But what if I apply the same formula down here? Write from this text 11 characters. That means choose right. So here we are using those functions which we would have come across or discussed earlier in basic Excel as well as in advanced Excel. We'll try to make the best use of those functions to get our validation in place. And you see, this one is @bright.edu and this one is 6@gmail.com. Now that's quite a mess. So here, my first level of validation should be this formula over here should be equal to, in double quotes, I would type @bright.edu. Mind the spelling. Don't make any errors with the placement of each character in this. If it matches, I get the result as true. That means write of 11 characters from this text should be equal to this. If it matches, it's true. If it doesn't match, I get a result as false. The moment it's a false, I must get an alert stating that it's an invalid or it's not a relevant email address. Well, this is the first level of validation. Let's put this here. I select the cell. Let's take this formula. We have already entered over here. I will copy this formula. Click on the cell. Click on data validation, custom, and enter the formula here and click OK. And here we have this. The validation is in place. Let me clear off the rest. Okay. Here it's @bright.edu. What if it is just ed? Well, it gives me an error. Meanwhile, let me also customize the error message. While I have selected the cell, I go to data validation again. We have a formula here. input message. Here, I would mention, please enter the email address provided, or let's say by the university, or in case if you want to be more specific, by the Bright University. And error alert, well, here you can mention this is not a valid bright.edu email address. Maybe you might want to shrink this down here and just mention as please enter your bright.edu email address. So we have an input message here, error alert here, and click OK. Here you see, please enter your bright.edu email address. Now I just changed this to ed. This is not a valid bright.edu email address. Well, that's good. Let's retry. Let's try gmail.com. Well, it's not bright. Now we put over here alice@bright.edu and hit enter. Well, it's giving an error there, but the email address was perfect, right? The last few characters, the last 11 characters were correct. So let's just click on cancel and see what went wrong with the validation. Here we had entered the formula as right of that text. In the beginning, let's put an equal sign and click OK. And now let's try. I say alice@bright.edu. Hit enter and it took. Let's try a different email address. What if it is johnson.m@bright.edu? Well, it works. But now what if it is johnson.m@bright, or just I missed the T. Let's say I missed the T and I put edu. That's the thing. Okay. So now this way we have a proper validation for appropriate email address here. So we have alice@bright.edu. How did we get this validation? Well, click on this data validation. First, instead of directly typing the formula over here, first we tested the formula over here where we know for sure that the last 11 characters of this email address would be @bright.edu. So we just ensured that the last 11 characters of this email address matches with our format, that's @bright.edu, and it worked. That's all. Now, if you see the next row, I don't see the drop down here, what we had earlier. So similarly, there's no data validation over here. One way of getting the data validation would be a very basic way. That would be just copy this and paste it down and clear the data. That is with the delete button on the keyboard, you cleared it off. Now you see the format, the validation, everything is there. That is one way of doing it. Okay, you have this list. So a better way of having this or managing this would be to select this entire table and format it as a table. In one of our earlier sessions, we had discussed about how to create your own custom style as well, in case if you're not happy with any of these mentioned in the list. But for now, let me select one of these. I like the ones at the bottom over here. Let's say we select the green one. Alright, so that's quite bright over there, but that's absolutely fine. And now you see, by default, the filters are added to the list. So in case if I want, I'll just remove the filters. And let's say here I have another person called Jamie Nelson. Now you see, there is a background color applied and Excel will automatically take this. Let me click here and you see it has automatically taken the formatting. It has automatically picked up the drop down list. We don't need to worry about the list now. It starts from Alabama and ends at Wyoming. Isn't that correct? It starts in Alabama and ends on Wyoming. So everything is covered. No state has been missed in the list. Now what about the date of birth? Is it still doing the validation? I type some random text and hit enter. The data validation has been taken care of. And what about this? I say that's jamie@outlook.com. It gives an error. It must be a bright.edu email address. And what about the names? All the validations in place? Well, over here, you might need to manually enter number 2. Or since we have formatted this as a table, what I recommend is just put a formula here as in previous number plus 1. Alright, so here we have this. I put jamie.n@bright.edu and it takes it. Now the date of birth for Jamie would be, let's say, 15 August 2000. How about 2020 or 2015? It gives an error because we had defined that it should not be less than 16 years old, right? So let's put it at 2000, and yes, it worked. Home state, we can select Colorado and then go for year of passing. The year of passing cannot be beyond the range and it cannot be a future date. Right, it must be. So let's put it as 2020. And CGPA, yeah, I cannot put any random text. It has to be, let's say, 7.14. And here we have this. Great. So this is the way how we can play with the validations here. I would recommend you to spend more time and hook up with your own formulas and try to make the best use of the custom. You can do wonders with this custom formatting, custom validation here. It's just that you need to know more and explore it. Or rather, please cut that last sentence. It's just that you need to explore more.